Hi again, and welcome back to my little series of podcast style chats. And today I'm joined with Jerry Gordon Brown, who's an accountant who actually specializes in small business. And I think he's been in business around about 30 odd years. He helps small businesses maximize their performance. And he's very kindly joined me today to share some of his financial wisdom and also give us a bit of an insight about why he became an accountant and perhaps a few tips about how we can deal with the current situation we're in. So thanks again, Jerry, for joining me. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, Graham. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, I'm an accountant. I qualified as an accountant years and years and years ago in the 80s. I, subsequently to qualifying an accountant, was then not an accountant until about 2 years ago. I have been involved in business and building my own businesses and selling my own businesses. So the skills were useful, but I'm not a massive fan of accountancy. I actually like business. Business is what interests me. And I kind of think that that's my little niche now. I work with small businesses and startups to help them, build better businesses. And the accountancy skills are very useful. But the fun in it, my passion is working with those business people because I just love business.
Right. So you'd say that if somebody came to you, they would be looking for an accountant, but you do something a little bit extra. So you're looking at the bigger picture in terms of small business?
Yeah. I mean, if someone comes to me and says, can you help me do my self-assessment? The answer is yes, of course. Sometimes a business, a startup or someone who's a sole trader is of a size where they don't really need any other support other than a little guide with regard to tax, etc. But when people perhaps go from a situation where they've been self-employed and now they want to take on their first employee and start to build their business a little more, that's where I can add real value because I've been on that journey myself a number of times. And the first couple of times I did it, it all seemed terribly easy. And then I did it for, I think it was the third time, and it was a nightmare. And that's when I learned. I learned about mistakes you make. I learned about people you can get involved with. I just learned an awful lot from the struggle that came with that, and I can help people perhaps avoid that, and that's what my passion is.
Brilliant. It's fair to say you're very experienced and a wide scope. When you're labelled as an accountant, but you do so much more.
I think if I was being unkind to myself, I'd say a jack of all trades. If I was being kinder, I would say a GP. I'm not a surgeon. There are people far better qualified than me to talk about specialist areas of tax. But the reality of it is most small business people don't need that kind of advice. Their tax situation is relatively straightforward. And what they perhaps need is a little bit of experience in other things. So, I get phone calls about, how do I franchise my business? How do I'm taking on an employee. How do I set a contract of employment up? Now, I'm not a lawyer or an HR specialist, and therefore I don't do it. But I will point people to people that can help you, and that's one of the marvelous things, as you well know, Graham, about being part of an extended network. You have access to specialists, and over time you build a group of people that you can really trust, and therefore clients have access to that as well. But because there are so many small businesses, for example, who employ people but don't have contracts of employment, and they don't understand why it's important too. And that's the bit that I can bring across to them and advise them about, and then they can go along and see an employment law specialist or a contract specialist to actually create a contract for them.
That's brilliant. You're almost like a business coach to one extent. You're helping beyond your label as an accountant. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do actually do some coaching work with a number of companies not many, but a number of companies that are growing where I'm actually not their accountant. They see their accountant once a year, maybe twice if they're lucky. They're doing a good job on the accounts, but they're not providing any added value. So I just go in and try and provide that added value.
That's fantastic. I like the idea that you're an accountant, but it's not what you love. It's the business side of it. I think that makes it very different. So what kind of inspired you to actually do what you do? Where did you start? What's your backstory?
Well, I mean, I started life as an English teacher.
Wow.
And I was looking to get married, and that involved me moving out of Yorkshire and up to the northeast. And I couldn't get a job teaching in the area of the northeast where my fiance wanted to live at the time. She needed to be near her, or wanted to be near her family. And so I joined an insurance company in their training department, which I found the most boring thing I ever did. And then as a consequence of that, I learned about various insurance products. I learned about mortgages. I learned about commercial mortgages. And I left that insurance company, joined a mortgage broker, stayed with that mortgage broker for about 18 months and thought, well, I can do this myself. And so this was all pre-Financial Services Act. So on the one hand, it was very straightforward to do. On the other hand, it was like the Wild West. There were some rogues around. But I set up a mortgage brokerage. It grew really, really quickly, because one of the things that I kind of found was that the key to it was there were only two sides of the business. There were placing the mortgages, which was a very different thing in those days. And there was the actually getting the clients. And I just developed relationships with estate agents and unions and people like that who would send me people along. And we grew that really quickly. And one day someone walked into my office. I did know them. Walked into my office and said, "Do you want to sell your business?" And I said, "What?" And they said, "Do you want to sell your business?" And I said, "Well, everything's always for sale. Depends on what you give me." And they made me an offer. I couldn't believe what that offer was. So I sold the business as fast as ever I could. And then went and sat down for a while and thought, well, that was easy. I'll do that again, but I'll do it with something different. And so I did do it in something different. I joined an accountancy firm to set up the consultancy side to their business. It was during that period that I did my accountancy training, while simultaneously setting up the consultancy business, which did very well. And we sold that. And that was all lovely. We sold the accountancy business to Haynes Watts, who were buying up lots of accountancy firms at the time. And I thought, okay, that was straightforward. Let's do it again. That's when it all hit the buffers. It was bad timing, but it was also bad management. Before, the marketing and sales had always been very, very easy. But what I was now doing, which was more training orientated, it wasn't so easy. It was a bad marketplace. And I just wasn't as, frankly, good as I thought I was. I just thought I was sort of the next Richard Branson, and I really wasn't. And I learned a lot of lessons, one of which was humility. And so we did sell that business, but we sold it for the grand total of £3,000. So it doesn't really count as a win. But after that, I went into business with my brother-in-law at the time, and we set up a software business that he created the software. I did the sales and marketing. That was a really good business. We did well. It could have been a lot better, but he decided that he was going to get married to an accountant. You've got to be careful with accountants. He got married to an accountant, and he just didn't want to put the hours in anymore and do what needed to be done. And so we sold that business. And that was how do I put it? Whilst we sold it and whilst we made some money out of it, it was quite sad to me, because I loved that business. And that could have been the biggest business that I've ever done, but it wasn't, because we got out early. But we made some money, and that was nice. And then the final business that I built and sold was a consultancy business. And that was a really structured build and sell. And we had a board of directors and regular meetings with a decent sized firm of accountants and solicitors and bank managers. We were part of the corporate bank team, if you like, there. And
wow,
God, that was not running a business. It was running a business, but it wasn't as entrepreneurial. It was all about meetings. Right. And it was a consultancy business. We had about 120 consultants. And it was a nightmare to run. It was from businesses that were fun and kind of light on their feet to maneuver, if you like. It was different, and I just didn't like it. But then when I sold that, I didn't know what to do, so I had a couple of interim director roles with companies. Basically, then started doing a bit of freelance work. I set up a telemarketing business with a colleague, which I didn't enjoy at all. I've actually still got that, but it's a teeny tiny business now. It was a lot bigger when he was involved. And I never, ever thought about going into accountancy. But then when Making Tax Digital came along, it will change and has changed, but it will be it'll create more change to come in the accountancy sector. And where there's change, there's opportunity. It's a big disruptor. And I thought, my experience is all about delivering service and making, adding value. And the simple production of accounts, it is now quite simple with cloud-based systems and online accounts. You can get it done very cheaply. So it's about adding value. And I thought, right, that's an opportunity.
Thanks for that. I mean, that's great. So it's fair to say that you're more of an entrepreneur, or that's the bit that you really enjoy, as opposed to, what you would consider the atypical businessman.
It's the entrepreneurial side of business that I enjoy. And I enjoy working with people that are entrepreneurial. They tend to have a million ideas, quite butterfly-like, that they move from one idea to another really quickly. And one of the things that I can add there is some process and some system and some, some let's focus and set some objectives and move forward. And it's like anything else. If you have some kind of plan, you're more likely to achieve what you want to achieve. So, yeah, I just love all that. It's fantastic.
So in your time, whether in business or as an accountant, who's been, is it anyone that's been sort of influential to you, your key people or mentors that you've looked up to in the business world?
Yeah, I mean, the first guy, the mortgage brokerage that I joined was a company called Bell Noble Elliott in the northeast of England, in Newcastle. The guy that ran it was a guy called Jack Bell. He was about 6'6", so it really was little and large because I'm 5'6". It amused the hell out of everyone when we went to functions together. But he was one of the most focused people that I've ever met. He would work every day from 10 till 4. And I know that sounds like that's not much, but all he would do was work. He didn't get distracted at all. He worked during that period of time, and he was very demanding. I was warned not to go and work for him because he had a record of turning staff over really quickly. Mm-hmm. But I really got on with him. I liked him because I was there to do a job, and I did the job, so he was fine. And I remember where I was working at the time, I was on, I think, about £3,500, and they gave me a company car, and he got a company mortgage as well in those days, and that was worth something. But when I joined him, within 6 months of joining him, he was paying me £15,000. So that was a massive jump. And the only reason that I left there is that I asked him whether there'd be a chance at any point of having shares in the business or working toward shares, and he was very honest with me. It made me a bit cross at the time, but with hindsight, he was just being honest. He said, no, not really. This is a family business, and we've been through so much. We'll either sell the business or burn the shares on the front lawn one day, one or the other. You're very happy for you to be a director of the company, but there isn't a chance of shares. And I thought, well, fair enough. So I went off and did my own thing. He was probably, I learned more, certainly in a short period of time with him, than I had learned all my business career before, such as it was at the time.
And has that work ethic of his that's influenced you throughout your journey?
If I'm not focused on something, I will float around and get very, very little done. I'm someone that's got to have objectives. If I've got objectives, and to me that they're sort of short-term realistic, I know what I need to get done. I'm very, very focused, and I'll work very hard to achieve those things. But I don't do it for any other reason than I enjoy doing it. I mean, I'm at a stage in my life now where I'll only work with people that I like. I'm not interested in having, regular contact with people that, frankly, I don't want to. And I realise how fortunate I am because of that. But it just makes every day and every transaction a joy. I'm not sure, I don't mean that doing the self-assessments or pulling a set of accounts together is a joy. That's not particularly, but it's the work with the clients and what needs to be done and the advice that you can give them when you've done the work. That's what's a joy. And seeing people move from A to B and then B to C and onward in their journey is fantastic. And I'm a bit like a small football club. I know I'm a selling club. So, I'll work with people till they get to a certain level, And then they need to move to a larger firm because I just can't offer them the set of resources that they will need as a bigger business. But that's fair enough. Even that is satisfactory when someone moves because of those reasons. Because very often I'll be instrumental in helping them go to another firm and finding another firm where there's a good fit.
Very clear you take a lot of pride from, seeing a business grow and moving on to the next thing. That is very unique.
Well, I don't know about unique, but it is just the way it is. It's just what I enjoy doing.
That's great. It's people come first.
Yeah. And what we're finding in this current situation is that you mentioned something at the network meeting we were both at beforehand, or that you would certainly look after your family before your business. And I think this represents a big change in mindset for a lot of business owners, because most business owners will focus on their business, feeling that ultimately that will benefit their family. But all of a sudden, we're in a situation where in the very short term, we might be in situations where we have to choose our family and their well-being or the business. And so it might be, if business dries up, someone has to go and get a job at Tesco's or whatever it might be. And that will be very, very hard for people to do, because there's a lot of pride invested and effort and blood, sweat and tears in business. But again, that's where a bit of experience comes in. And sometimes you have to sit down and have hard conversations with people, because it doesn't mean they can't bounce back later. So that's the downside of the current situation. And there's been a couple of clients that I've had that have gone to the wall in the last 6-7 weeks. But they were businesses that were struggling anyway. And this is just the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. But it's then helping people come to terms with that and then move forward. And the reality is that once they come to terms with it, it's such a massive weight off their shoulders. Yeah. They feel 10 years younger, disappointed, but nevertheless 10 years younger. And, go get a job at Tesco's for a few months and then regroup, rethink, and go again, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I guess it's like a reset button to a certain extent. Reset, refine your purpose, and then move forward from that.
That's exactly right. You put it better than I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, leading on to that, I was going to get to it anyway, but we're talking about the current COVID situation, the lockdown. I mean, what are you doing? How are you sort of leveraging, your clients, and what's it for you at the moment?
I'm encouraging people to get their numbers up to date so they know exactly where they are when they come out of lockdown, because people at the moment, a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people are in receipt of funding right now, and they'll get to the point where that funding stops or is substantially reduced. Assuming they can trade, they're going to start trading again, and that's when they're going to find life difficult, because the cash flow won't flow as well. There's signs in the economy already that people are taking longer to pay, and it is estimated debtor days will go up significantly as a result of this, because you might well go back to working with people that you've worked with before, but have they got any money? And that money will take time to flow through the system. So it's persuading people to do things like short-term cash flow projections. Really think about the short-term money. Cut back on your overhead as much as you possibly can. Don't change your car. It's those silly things that people look forward to changing their car after 2-3 years or whatever it is, and they get a buzz from it. Don't do it. No, unless you're at the end of a contract and have to. Cut your costs as far as you can. Again, there's going to be some hard decisions around there, but I always think of it a bit like the air things that come down in an aeroplane. If the cabin loses compression, the instruction is to put it onto yourself first, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't help anyone else. And it's like that in business. Get those basics right. If they weren't right before, get them right now. Make the hard decisions now. You can always soften up later, but come out of this with a very clear picture of where you are and where you need to be, and micromanage yourself through that period. And that's what I'm trying to get across to people. It really is about looking at the world as it is, and then work out where you would like it to be, and then plan your route. But do it step by step in short-term blocks. There's no point in thinking 5 years ahead right now. We've got to get out of this first. Yeah, okay, have an idea where you'd like to be in 5 years. 5 years, that's fine. But say, how long will it take you to recover? and then build the path to recovery.
Do you think that many businesses aren't looking ahead at the moment? They're just seeing this, oh, it'll be the end of the lockdown and we can all go back to being as we were before. I don't think so. I'm assuming that's the same for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think people tend to identify with what they do. So, I mean, you're a photographer, someone's a plumber, someone's an accountant, whatever it might be. That's what you do. And the thought process is, well, as soon as lockdown is over, people will want those services again. And of course they will, but will they want them in the same way? Will they want them at the same price? I mean, we've all learned a lot over lockdown about, for example, how we acquire goods and services. Because, you know, it isn't so much now about buying the brands you used to buy and go to the shops you used to go to. It's about how you can get your hands on what you need safely. So, yeah, home delivery's grown massively. Will that change back? That will affect the high street. That there are all sorts of changes that might come. People might go, right, okay, I hope not, Graham, but people might go, okay, we were going to get married. Do you know what? We've taken a financial hit. We might have to wait, not just, you know, the extended period of the lockdown. We might have to wait an extra year, an extra 2 years. And that affects how everything's done. It affects the money flowing through the economy, and we just don't know what's going to happen. So it's about being as structured and as safe as we possibly can be, as secure rather as we possibly can be. So keep cash. That's the primary advice I give to people. You know, be as liquid as you can. Obviously, if you haven't got any money, you can't do that. But how are you going to get out of this? It might well be that you have to put your business on hold for 6 months and go get a job, assuming that you can get one, to generate some income. And I think people need to challenge themselves on those things. If you're a business and you've furloughed your employees because you've got any number of employees, doesn't really matter. You're coming out of the lockdown. Will it be simply a question of unfurloughing those employees, or will you have to let some go? You need to think about that. And it might be that you need to let some of your staff go. You need to make them part-time, and that's a horrible decision to have to make. It affects people's lives, but it's better making that decision than losing all your staff because the company can't survive. Lovely, cheerful subject, isn't it?
Well, it needs to be said. I think that it's like the talking hard sometimes is what people need to hear.
And the insolvency practitioners that I speak to, and in my world, you do speak to quite a few insolvency practitioners, that almost unanimously saying now isn't when the problem's going to be, it's coming out of lockdown. And assuming that's the case, then people have to kind of be prepared. And the other thing I'm trying to get across to people is don't pay your business bills with personal credit cards. Because it's an easy thing to do, and people are very, generally speaking, very straightforward and very fair, and you know that they want to pay their suppliers, they want to pay the other businesses that they work with, and that's fine and that's good. But be careful doing it on your personal credit cards because you've got you're personally guaranteeing that effectively. So be careful.
Are you seeing that a lot?
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. Yeah. And it is one sign that a business has a problem if it's being funded by directors' personal credit cards. That's a flag. It doesn't necessarily mean that the business is in trouble, but it's a flag that it could be. Because why would it happen if there's enough cash flowing through the business? You know,
what do you see? Have there been any? If people do the right thing, do you see that there could be some potential positives from coming through the lockdown and stuff?
Well, yes, really. I mean, I think as we touched on before, I hope people will review how they work. Certainly, I reviewed how I work for transactional stuff. I will be using Zoom a lot more than hopping into my car and going to see people. Doesn't mean that I won't see people face to face, but for transactional stuff, there's absolutely no need, which buys me quite a lot of time, which is great. And I think there's a lot of other people that could take advantage of that. I think home working, there's a massive opportunity to increase home working. Now, I'm sure there's a section of society that won't like it. I mean, if you're a young person and you're maybe in your first role, you want a bit of life as well. You want some social life around it. So going into London and going to the bars after work is great fun. As you get a bit older, it's less fun. And the idea of working from home, I think, appeals to quite a few people. I think the other opportunities come from pivoting your business, where, what is it that your customers now want that you can provide them with? And this is one of the things that I'm talking to clients about as well. Are you going to need to change your marketing message? Are you going to need to be focusing on the current situation rather than the situation as it was before? I mean, none of us know what's going to happen as a consequence of this. I mean, it might take a relatively short amount of time, a year or so, to recover financially as a country. It might take longer. We don't know. And what does coming out of lockdown mean anyway? That might well be something that we haven't thought through yet. I think a lot of people think, okay, we'll just be back to normal. I don't think that's going to be the case. So it's pivoting. It's working out how do we adapt to that? Yeah. How do we turn our business into something else? How do we offer different services? And I think that's positive. Innovation is a positive thing for business. One of the things that gets in the way of success is working on the basis that we do things the way we do them because we do things the way we do them. That doesn't help build a successful business. And if there's an interruption to that way of thinking, I think that is positive, albeit there's a short-term shock.
It's almost a positive. I think of it is that it's that entrepreneurial spirit of do it. Let's see what else we can do. If that's not working, let's figure out. Let's pivot. Let's look at. I mean, I've had to do it myself. I can't actually go out and meet my clients because I have to be in their company to actually photograph them. So, I'm doing this kind of stuff and video and other bits and pieces that I'm trying to sort of bring in. So I do try and keep positive about it, even though it's a difficult situation for us all. I mean, sort of going back to that, what would your, the top 5 tips or top 3 tips would you suggest? Now, we've already mentioned about, looking at your costs. What the words of wisdom could you offer us?
I mean, the top one is become an honorary Yorkshireman. Be careful with your money. It is number 1. Number 2 would be don't stop marketing, but be careful with the marketing you do. There's a lot of help available at the moment for people who want to use social media and use social media better. And a lot of that help's free. Avail yourself of that. Make sure that things like LinkedIn and Facebook are working for you. So, we all need new clients. So how are you going to get those new clients? Address that. So it's be careful with money. Look at your marketing very carefully and do what you can. And thirdly, and these are in no particular order, thirdly, look at your service offering. Is it appropriate for your clients' problems that they find themselves facing now? Because that's what people are going to react to. If yours is a service that would be nice to have when things get back to normal, you're going to be waiting a while. So how do you pivot that service to satisfy a short-term requirement that your customers may have? Not everyone will be able to do that, but you really could. You should be thinking about how you do that. And there again are some really good people that you can use as a sounding board. You can get on the social media, get on the internet, get on LinkedIn. There's loads of people offering services. I mean, you and I are lucky enough to be in a network, BBN, and in BBN there's so many good quality people who will offer their services for free to help.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, everyone sort of is doing it to be helpful, and as a byproduct of being helpful, you're not doing your profile any harm at all. No. So I would say to people, be as helpful of people as you can be. And, there are people out there with skills that you don't have. Take advantage of any help that those people are prepared to offer. And don't borrow money if you don't need to. That's the other thing I'd say. Just because it's very easy, apparently, to get a bounce back loan doesn't mean you should.
It is a difficult decision. I know a lot of people will have to because they're in a different situation. Yeah, it's great that you mentioned about the network. I mean, that's how I got to meet you through the BBN Network. And I think that is actually really good advice, because people that I've worked with or spoken to outside of networking groups seem to be in a completely different place, both mentally and sort of, decision wise, what they're doing with their businesses. And I think that, being part of a network has actually really helped me keep on top of things. And as you say, it's like this pool of expertise.
Networking does two things. It actually is good for you mentally. I think it is good for your well-being. I also think it keeps you visible. I mean, I've noticed that there are a number of people who they don't like this Zoom environment, and they're not hiding exactly, they're just not participating. And then when you do see them, very often they seem really down.
Yeah.
And I think, well, it is quite possible to get Zoom overload. I do think that, generally speaking, it's very helpful, and I look forward to the network meetings now. I look forward to certain faces, and I look forward to having conversations with the breakout rooms with people that I don't normally have conversations with. And for me, it's been really, really good for me. I've enjoyed it. It's been good for my well-being, because if I'm honest, you do have days where you feel a bit ugh. But generally speaking, I've been quite happy through this whole thing. And it's a combination of, I work from home anyway, so it's not a culture shock to me. Albeit culture shock is having children flying around causing chaos all the time whilst I'm trying to work, but that's another thing entirely. But the networking has kept me sane. It undoubtedly has. Because the only other experience of going out is walking the dog, which is nice, or going to the shops, which isn't.
No, that is good. Yeah, no, I highly recommend. I mean, that would be my bit of advice to add on to yours is, if you can join into some networking, get out there and you'll find your community. And I think that's, for me, it's a great way of doing things.
I think one of the things that this has shown us is that, we're all the same. We all worry about the same things. And what really matters, and it's family and it's friends, and everything else, it might be of high importance to us or lower importance to us, but it's secondary to family and friends. And when in this situation, we're all in the same situation, and we're all just human beings. And that's really, really nice. You get to connect with people at a personal level. And I've enjoyed that.
Me too. And it's a fitting end to our conversation to sort of at least end on a positive note, rather than the doom and gloom that is out there at the moment for everybody. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody out there, tips or thank yous or anything like that you would like to mention?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to you for a start, Graham. I mean, this is wonderful. You make it painless. I'm not someone that enjoys the camera at all. I've got a face made for radio, but you're very good at this, and you, as I say, make it painless. There's loads of people that I could say thank you to. Brian for keeping running BBN. It's been marvellous. It's been a lifesaver. The wonderful Michelle Dowsett for tips on how to streamline things in your business. Tracy Westall, Julie Firth and Sonia Whittam, they're wonderful stuff on marketing, which has been invaluable. So there's lots and lots of people that you can shout out to. There's too many to mention, but I'm very, very grateful to all the people that have supported me. And I have turned to people for support, and they've turned up every time. And I won't forget it. And to my clients, thank you.
Can't forget the clients. We need them. We all need them.
We do.
Most definitely. So if anybody wanted to get in contact with you or find out a little bit more about your services, and what's the best way to connect or find you online?
Well, LinkedIn would be probably the easiest. Jerry Gordon Brown. Yeah, and if you ask to connect with me, I will connect with you. You can basically that would be the easiest way. Just look me up on LinkedIn and find me there. Obviously, you can email me, jerry@jerrygb.co.uk, but people will forget that. Just go on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn, ask for a connection, and we'll have a chat. I'm always up for a Zoom coffee as well.
Yes, and we have done that. What I'll do, Jerry, please send me any links that you would like people to go to, and I'll make sure that when I post the video, that the links are there so that people can find you online and have a chat with you. I just want to say thanks for giving me a bit of your time today. I've really enjoyed it. I know there's obviously the middle part has been quite a sensitive, downbeat subject, but as you said earlier, sometimes we just need to hear those hard decisions to be made, and I think it's important that people do listen and take your advice. You've been doing this a long time, so it's worth listening to. And we finished on an upbeat moment as well, talking about the networking, which is how we met. So without any sort of other things to say, I just want to say thanks for coming again, and really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.